Soulmate news, they regret losing you, and now they're secretly planning their return. My beloved child, stop for a moment and listen carefully. If you found this message at this exact moment, let your heart become still, because there is something you need to understand before you hear what comes next. The person you have been thinking about, the person whose silence has confused you, the person whose absence left questions inside your heart may not be as unaffected as they appear. Behind the distance, behind the silence, behind the things they never said, there may be a storm of emotions that you never got to see. And today, my beloved child, this message is about regret, realization, hidden feelings, and the possibility of a return. But before you allow your emotions to run ahead of you, remember this message is not asking you to chase anyone. It is not asking you to beg for attention. It is not asking you to abandon your peace while waiting for another person to make a decision. This message is about recognizing your worth and understanding that sometimes people only realize what they had after they have experienced what life feels like without it. My beloved child, there was a time when they may have believed you would always be there. They may have assumed that no matter how distant they became, no matter how cold their words sounded, no matter how many times they pulled away, you would eventually come back. They may have underestimated the depth of your heart. They may have mistaken your patience for weakness. They may have mistaken your kindness for something they could receive without appreciating it. But something changed. And that change may have happened quietly. There may have been no dramatic announcement, no phone call, no public confession, no obvious sign. It may have started with a simple moment when they realized that your presence was no longer available in the way it once was. They looked for your attention. It wasn't there. They expected your message. It didn't come. They expected you to ask how they were doing. You stopped asking. They expected you to keep explaining yourself. You became silent. And suddenly, the silence that once seemed like freedom became uncomfortable. My beloved child, sometimes a person does not understand your value while they have constant access to you. They understand it when they lose access. They begin remembering the little things. The way you listened. The way you cared. The way you noticed changes in their mood without being told. The way you encouraged them when they doubted themselves. The way you stayed when other people walked away. The way you could sense something was wrong even when they said, "I'm fine." They remember conversations they once considered ordinary. They remember your voice. They remember your laughter. They remember your patience. They remember moments they thought would happen again. And now those memories may be returning with a completely different meaning. My beloved child, this is where regret begins. Regret rarely arrives all at once. It comes in waves. First comes denial. Then curiosity. Then memories. Then comparison. Then realization. And finally, regret. They may have tried to convince themselves that moving on would be easy. They may have told themselves that they had made the right decision. They may have surrounded themselves with distractions. They may have focused on work, friends, entertainment, social media, or another relationship. But distractions cannot permanently silence the heart. Eventually, the quiet moments arrive. Late at night. During a drive. While listening to a familiar song. When passing a familiar place. When seeing something that reminds them of you. And suddenly, your memory appears. Not because they planned it. Not because they wanted it. But because something inside them still connects you with a part of their life they have not completely released. My beloved child, they may have tried to replace the feeling, but they could not replace the connection. And that is why this story is not simply about someone returning. It is about someone realizing. They are beginning to understand what your presence meant. They are beginning to understand what your absence means. And they may be asking themselves a question that they were afraid to ask before: did I lose the person who was actually meant to be in my life? That question can change everything. Because once someone genuinely begins asking that question, they can no longer comfortably pretend that nothing happened. They start reviewing the past. They remember their mistakes. They remember the moments they hurt you. They remember the times they ignored your efforts. They remember when you tried to communicate and they refused to listen. They remember when you gave them another chance. They remember when you forgave them. And they may realize that you were not asking for perfection. You were asking for effort. You were asking for honesty. You were asking for consistency. You were asking to feel valued. And perhaps they only understood that after you stopped asking. My beloved child, there is something powerful about losing access to someone who genuinely loved you. When someone who always cared suddenly becomes quiet, the silence can speak louder than words. Your absence may have become a mirror. And in that mirror, they are seeing themselves. They are seeing the choices they made. They are seeing what they took for granted. They are seeing the consequences of their behavior. And they may not like what they see. This is why they could be secretly planning their return. But remember, my beloved child, planning a return and actually making a healthy return are two different things. Someone can miss you and still be afraid. Someone can regret losing you and still struggle with pride. Someone can love you and still need to grow. Someone can think about calling you and still put the phone down. Someone can type a message and delete it. Someone can look at your profile without saying anything. Someone can ask mutual friends about you without admitting why. Someone can wonder whether you have moved on. Someone can fear that you no longer want them. And that fear can become stronger than their desire to reach out. So if they have been quiet, do not automatically assume that silence means indifference. Sometimes silence is conflict. Sometimes silence is pride. Sometimes silence is fear. Sometimes silence is regret. Sometimes silence is someone trying to figure out how to approach the person they hurt. My beloved child, imagine what it feels like to realize that the person you thought would always wait for you has finally stopped waiting. That realization can be painful. Because suddenly the power dynamic changes. Before, they may have believed you were emotionally available whenever they wanted. Now they may be wondering whether they still have a place in your heart. They may wonder. Would they answer if I called? Would they forgive me? Would they even listen? Have they met someone else? Did I wait too long? Did I destroy something that could have been beautiful? These questions can keep a person awake. And sometimes the strongest regret is not simply missing someone. It is knowing you had the opportunity to love them properly and failed to do so. My beloved child, you may have cried alone. You may have questioned yourself. You may have wondered whether you were too much. Whether you cared too deeply. Whether you expected too much. Whether you should have been more patient. Whether you should have sent another message. Whether you should have fought harder. But hear this clearly, you were never wrong for wanting to be valued. You were never wrong for wanting consistency. You were never wrong for wanting honesty. You were never wrong for wanting someone who could meet you emotionally. And you were never wrong for protecting your heart when the relationship became painful. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is step back. Not because you stopped caring, but because you finally started caring about yourself too. My beloved child, there is a difference between chasing someone and allowing someone to recognize your value. You don't have to chase. You don't have to convince. You don't have to prove that you are worthy. Your worth existed before they recognized it. Your worth exists whether they return or not. And if they truly want to return, they must return with more than words. They must return with clarity. With accountability. With effort. With consistency. With a willingness to repair what was broken. Because a reunion without transformation simply recreates the same pain. My beloved child, perhaps that is why this season has been so quiet. Maybe the silence has not been punishment. Maybe it has been preparation. Preparation for you. Preparation for them. Preparation for a different version of this connection. Because sometimes two people cannot come together successfully until both have learned what they were supposed to learn while apart. You may have learned boundaries. They may be learning accountability. You may have learned self-respect. They may be learning appreciation. You may have learned not to chase. They may be learning that your absence is real. You may have learned to stand alone. They may be learning that losing you was not freedom. It was a consequence. My beloved child, there is something else you need to hear. Do not let the possibility of their return stop your life. Do not put your happiness on hold. Do not stare at your phone waiting for a notification. Do not measure your worth by whether they contact you. Do not spend every night asking when they will come back. Instead, live. Grow. Heal. Smile again. Build again. Dream again. Become the version of yourself that no longer needs someone's return to feel complete. And ironically, that is often when the energy of a situation changes. When you stop chasing. When you stop forcing. When you stop checking. When you stop asking everyone for updates. When you stop trying to control the outcome. You create space for truth to reveal itself. And if they are truly meant to return, their actions will eventually tell you. My beloved child, you may soon notice something different. Perhaps they become more visible. Perhaps they find subtle ways to appear in your world. Perhaps they interact with something you post. Perhaps they ask someone about you. Perhaps they send a simple message that seems casual but carries much more emotion underneath it. Maybe it is something as simple as, "Hey, how have you been?" But behind those words may be 100 unsent messages. They may want to say, "I miss you. I regret what happened. I think about you. I wish I had handled things differently. I don't know if you still care. I don't know if you will forgive me. But pride may prevent them from saying everything immediately. So they may start small. A simple conversation. A casual question. A reaction. A memory. A reason to reconnect. And you may feel the difference. Not because you are desperately looking for signs, but because their behavior becomes more intentional. My beloved child, if they return, don't immediately give them everything they once had. Let them demonstrate. Let them show consistency. Let them communicate. Let them take responsibility. Let them explain what happened. Let them acknowledge the pain. Let them show that they have grown. You do not have to punish them. But you also do not have to ignore what happened. Forgiveness and trust are not the same thing. You can forgive someone and still require them to rebuild trust. You can love someone and still have boundaries. You can miss someone and still refuse to accept less than you deserve. You can want reconciliation and still move slowly. That is not coldness. That is wisdom. My beloved child, maybe they are secretly planning their return because they now realize something they never expected. They expected life without you to become easier. Instead, it became emptier. They expected new people to erase old memories. Instead, new experiences reminded them of what was different about you. They expected time to make them forget. Instead, time gave them perspective. They expected you to chase. Instead, you became quiet. And now they are left with the truth. You mattered. More than they admitted. More than they showed. More than they understood at the time. My beloved child, there is a beautiful possibility waiting beyond the pain. You may one day look back at this season and realize that the silence protected you. You may realize that the delay gave both of you time to grow. You may realize that what felt like rejection was actually redirection. You may realize that losing access to someone forced them to recognize what they had. And you may realize that the greatest victory was not getting them back. The greatest victory was getting yourself back. Your confidence. Your peace. Your laughter. Your dreams. Your identity. Your ability to love without losing yourself. My beloved child, don't be afraid of what happens next. If they return, let them return. If they apologize, listen if you feel safe doing so. If they explain, hear them. If they want another chance, evaluate their actions. But don't abandon your standards. And if they never return, do not interpret that as proof that you were unworthy. Sometimes people miss their opportunity. Sometimes people learn too late. Sometimes love exists but timing, maturity, or circumstances prevent a healthy relationship. And sometimes the person you thought was your forever becomes the lesson that prepares you for something healthier. You do not have to know the ending today. You only have to keep moving forward. My beloved child, perhaps you have been asking, will they come back? But perhaps the better question is, will they come back differently? That question changes everything. Because the goal is not simply reunion. The goal is healthy connection. The goal is mutual respect. The goal is emotional maturity. The goal is two people choosing each other intentionally. Not because they are afraid of being alone. Not because they are jealous. Not because another relationship failed. Not because nostalgia became overwhelming. But because they understand each other's value and are willing to build something real. My beloved child, if they are truly returning, you will not have to carry the entire relationship again. They will meet you halfway. They will initiate. They will communicate. They will listen. They will apologize when necessary. They will stop making excuses. They will stop disappearing. They will stop expecting you to understand everything while explaining nothing. They will begin showing you that they are serious. And that is when you will know the difference between regret and transformation. Regret says, I miss you. Transformation says, I understand how I hurt you, and I am willing to change. Regret says, I want you back. Transformation says, I want to rebuild your trust. Regret says, I hate being without you. Transformation says, I want to create a relationship where you feel safe, valued, and respected. My beloved child, listen carefully. Words can be beautiful. But patterns reveal truth. If they return, watch the pattern. Don't get hypnotized by one emotional conversation. Don't let one apology erase months of behavior. Don't let one romantic message convince you that everything has changed. Give time a chance to reveal whether their change is real. You have already learned what promises without consistency feel like. You don't need to repeat that lesson. My beloved child, perhaps your season of waiting is not about waiting for a person. Perhaps it is about waiting for clarity. Maybe you needed this time to understand yourself. Maybe you needed distance to heal. Maybe you needed silence to hear your own thoughts again. Maybe you needed to remember that your identity is bigger than one relationship. Maybe you needed to rediscover joy outside of romance. Maybe you needed to stop asking, why did they leave, and start asking, what did I learn? Because your growth matters. Your healing matters. Your future matters. And whether they return or not, you are becoming stronger. My beloved child, there is a beautiful strength in saying, if it is meant to return, let it return correctly. Not secretly. Not halfway. Not through mixed signals. Not through games. Not through jealousy. Correctly. With honesty. With intention. With respect. With courage. With consistency. That is the kind of return worth considering. My beloved child, maybe they will finally speak about the feelings they buried. Maybe they will tell you they missed you. Maybe they will tell you that they regretted their decision. Maybe they will say that they thought about you more than they admitted. Maybe they will confess that they were afraid. Maybe they will admit that pride controlled them. And perhaps hearing those words will bring tears. If that happens, let yourself feel. You don't have to be emotionally numb to be strong. You can cry. You can forgive. You can remember. You can feel love. Strength does not mean feeling nothing. Strength means feeling deeply without allowing your emotions to make every decision for you. My beloved child, remember the person you became during the silence. Remember the nights you survived. Remember the moments you thought you couldn't move forward. Remember how you slowly started smiling again. Remember how you rebuilt yourself. Don't forget that person. Because if they return, you need to protect that version of yourself. You cannot go backward simply because someone finally came forward. The relationship must move forward too. My beloved child, perhaps they are returning because they finally understand that losing you did not solve their problems. It only removed one of the people who challenged them to face those problems. Maybe they thought distance would bring peace. Instead, it brought reflection. Maybe they thought another connection would be easier. Instead, it revealed what they were missing. Maybe they thought you were replaceable. Instead, they learned that every person is different. And now they may be reconsidering everything. My beloved child, if that is happening, let them reconsider. You don't have to interrupt their process. You don't have to rescue them from their regret. They need to understand what happened. They need to own their decisions. They need to choose what they want. And if they choose you, they need to communicate that clearly. No more guessing. No more decoding. No more wondering. No more emotional puzzles. Love should not require you to be a detective. My beloved child, the person who is serious about you will eventually make things clearer, not more confusing. They may be nervous. They may be imperfect. They may not have all the right words. But their direction will be clear. Their effort will be visible. Their intention will be consistent. That is what you should look for. Not perfection. Consistency. My beloved child, perhaps you are listening because you secretly hope they return. It is okay to hope. But don't build a prison out of hope. Hope should inspire you, not imprison you. Keep living. Keep growing. Keep becoming. Let tomorrow surprise you. Maybe the surprise will be their message. Maybe it will be someone new. Maybe it will be an opportunity. Maybe it will be a deeper sense of peace. Maybe it will be the realization that you no longer need the answer you once desperately wanted. Whatever comes, receive it with wisdom. My beloved child, your life is not paused. Your heart is not permanently broken. Your future is not defined by one ending. You are allowed to love again. You are allowed to trust again. You are allowed to be happy again. And if the person who left wants another chance, they will need to meet the healed ver.